My name's Mary. I'm 20 years old, and I grew up with a very strict and religious mother. Every Sunday during church, I would say the same prayer to God. Please, God, help my mother to change into a different person to make my life easier and more comfortable. I never actually expected God to answer my prayers, but then something completely unexpected happened. Living with my mother wasn't easy for Dad and me. She was very strict and always had her ridiculously high standards. As a result of this, she gave us both a long list of daily house chores, and she could turn from a well-tempered woman into a monster at the slightest thing. Once, when I was dusting, I accidentally smashed one of her beloved cat ornaments, and she locked me in my bedroom for a full day. Another time, Dad forgot to take the trash out, so she emptied it into his briefcase. Mom also liked to have us live by her rules. Dinner was at 7 p.m. prompt. Bedtime was at 9:30 p.m. with no room for adjustment. And under no circumstances was I allowed to ever go out with a boy. I mean, come on, I'm a 20-year-old girl. I started dating this guy called Ben in secret. He's such a kind, caring guy, but I knew Mom wouldn't see it that way. So when I went round to his, I had to pretend to her that I was meeting friends. It was difficult having to lie to Mom, and it sucked that I couldn't stay over at his place. I was a grown woman, but Mom made me feel like I was still a little girl. As much as Dad and I loved Mom, her strict rules and temper were getting to us. One time, I overheard Mom yell at Dad, "You're a useless old fool, and I don't know why I married you." I walked into the kitchen to find Dad sighing deeply while staring blankly into space. Turns out, her outburst was all because he'd made toast with the bread Mom was saving for sandwiches. I felt so bad for him, so the next time I was at church, I said my usual prayer to God. I never expected Mom to actually alter her ways, but then everything changed 180 degrees after the terrible accident. My mom had a serious car crash in which the airbag didn't pop out in time. She bumped her head hard and ended up in a coma. Seeing Mom lying there unconscious and helpless was horrible. I prayed to God for her to wake up, even if it meant putting up with her strict rules. I actually believed that she was in this state because of me and my evil prayers. But then, a miracle happened. After 3 whole agonizing months, my mother woke up. Thank you, God, for answering my prayers again. Only my mother was looking at me like I was a complete stranger. Then she said to me, "Sweetie, do you go to my school? As you look familiar." Huh? What was going on? Then, when she saw her reflection in the mirror, she screamed and said, "How am I so old? This mirror's broken." The doctor ran some tests. Turns out, Mom lost all her memories that happened after she was 18. So, in my mother's mind, she's still an 18-year-old schoolgirl. Having a mother with the mindset of a teenage girl was, well, difficult. We had to decorate the spare room with a load of posters of bands from the 80s I've never heard of before. We had to teach her what a laptop was and show her how to use the cooker. Also, she never cleans anymore, and she even steals my clothes. My dad now works a lot, and I'm stuck playing mom to my mom. I once caught her trying to sneak out in my miniskirt and tie-dye t-shirt, and I folded my arms and scowled at her. "You're not going out dressed like that." She got so mad with me and sulked off to her room. OMG. I just realized I was becoming my mother. But she did look ridiculous. She's a 45-year-old woman, not some teenaged girl. But after the initial shock of my mother acting like a completely different person, I began to warm to her. She was funny, super curious, and most importantly of all, she didn't care about rules. Although one time my cell rang, this startled her so much that she grabbed it and threw it in the sink. Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed, but I guess it was kind of funny. She just didn't understand this world anymore. The one thing I did enjoy was having pamper evenings with her. She put scrunchies in my hair and helped me put my mask on. Then we chatted for hours about school, mean girls, and cute boys. Yeah, so, okay, talking about boys with my mom was weird, but it felt like this wasn't my mom at all, but someone new entirely. Then she asked me if I had a boyfriend, and I nodded without hesitation. Now I can comfortably talk about him without being afraid of her judgment. I told her, Ben is so cute, polite, mature, and very talented, and he's so good with technology. Oh, he sounds swell, she smiled. Could you invite him over to show me how to use that face what's-it thing on the computery thing? I replied, Sure, Wendy. This was great. Now, not only could I be open about having a boyfriend, but now instead of feeling afraid of Mom, I was friends with her. Ben came over and helped Mom out with the computer and things. She still seemed completely puzzled by it all, but he seemed so chilled around her, even when she picked up the laptop and began to shake it in an attempt to get it to turn on. Yeah, the on button helps. I left them to it and went to get orange juice. But then I walked back into the room to see her brushing her fingers through his hair. When she saw me, she quickly pulled her hand away, and I was left wondering if I imagined it. But then later on, when we were watching a movie, she made a big deal of sitting next to him. Did my mom have a crush on my boyfriend? No, surely not. But then, after Ben left, Mom said, "That Ben is so handsome. Unlike that old man that also lives here. He has terrible dress sense and smells like cod liver oil tablets." This shocked me. Poor Dad. I guess it was a good thing he was working away so much, as I don't think he could have dealt with Mom being like this. Then, a few days later, Mom invited Ben over for dinner to thank him for helping her. At that point, I thought that maybe I was just too skeptical. My mother may be childish and impulsive, but she would never be her daughter's rival, right? While I was cooking in the kitchen, the two of them were laughing non-stop in the living room. They told each other endless stories, and it was annoying that my mother kept praising him and jumping up and down like a kid. I had to put on headphones and try to focus on cooking so I didn't have to hear those ridiculous sounds. But when I finished prepping dinner and took off my headphones, the house was strangely quiet. Where did they go? I walked out into the living room to the most horrifying sight. While Ben was trying to focus on the computer screen, my mother was sitting next to him on the sofa, her hands all over him. What the heck? Her hand was moving downwards and touching his thigh. "Stop!" I shouted. Startled, Ben stood up. That's when I noticed sweat drenched his shirt. He stuttered out, I didn't do anything. Your mother." And then he ran away. Needless to say, about my mom, she didn't look embarrassed at all. On the contrary, she turned to me and moaned out, "Thanks a lot, Mary. You scared off my date." I went crazy, threw a mirror at her, and told her to have a long, hard look at herself. She screamed back at me that Ben loved her because of her soul, not her age or appearance. And you know what? My mom and Ben are now texting each other. I don't know what's more shocking, that my mom's trying to steal my guy, or that she actually figured out how to text. Ben showed me some of the messages, and they're so bad, I actually thought I was going to vomit. One message said, "Please, Ben, I want to meet up in secret and kiss you and things. Mary never needs to know." Ben explained to me that he didn't know what to do. He says he loves me and never wants to risk losing me, but he didn't want to be rude to my mom, as he knew she wasn't herself. Poor Ben having to deal with all this. From now on, I'm keeping Ben and my mom apart. So I've gone from having a secret boyfriend to having a mom who wants to kiss my boyfriend. My life is crazy. Please, God, I don't recognize my disciplined, strict mother anymore. And as challenging as it was to be around her, I miss her, and I just want her back. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm here to tell you how my not-so-small problem changed the course of my life. When it comes to butts, well, there are lots of names for them, such as tush, behind, backside, bottom, and so on. Trust me, I've heard them all, countless times. You see, I have a big butt. In proportion to the rest of me then, well, it's undeniably massive. My mom and dad both have pretty big butts, so combine both of their genes together, and you end up with me. Ever since I was a little kid, strangers passed comments on the size of my butt. I remember being in a grocery store once, innocently looking in the candy aisle, when a woman came up to my mom and said, "Your baby, is she all right? Because her backside seems to be very big." Yeah, seriously, some people were that rude. And the older I got and the bigger my butt grew, then the worse their comments became. Teenage me, well, I had a hard time. At the time when I hit puberty, my butt became even more enormous than boys didn't look at my face anymore. Instead, they only seemed to notice my butt. One boy was staring at it so hard that he walked straight into his locker and gave himself a concussion. Then there were the seats at school. Why did they have to be so tiny? I'd rather stand up than try to fit in them. But no choice for me, I had to literally squeeze myself onto it, then do a wiggle routine to get out of it, and in fact, whenever I tried to sit down, someone always pointed and laughed at me. Talk about awkward. This popular girl called Mary always went out of her way to tease me. One day, I was wandering down the hallways when Mary stuck her foot out and tripped me over, and then said, "No one likes you, tushy face." I looked up at her, and that's when I realized I'd had enough. I must do something to stop this. As she triumphantly walked past me, my anger flared up, and for a moment, I lost control. I rushed in and pushed her. The next moment, she fell down the stairs and lay there unconscious. I stood stunned watching her. I hadn't noticed that we were standing near the stairs. Seeing that, her group of mean girls rushed in and started to hit me. I just couldn't do anything but lay on the ground and keep my head. Then, a voice piped up at the back of the crowd. "Leave her alone. It isn't her fault that she has a big bum." It was this girl called Anita. After that, we started hanging out more, both in school and out of it. Having Anita by my side made me feel stronger, and the mean comments about my butt size didn't bother me so much anymore. My life at school got a bit better. Then one day, this rich kid at school was holding a huge senior party at his family mansion. For the first time in a long time, I felt confident enough to go. I arrived at the party wearing my cutest dress. I saw Mary with her large gang of wannabes, but I knew there'd be lots of trouble if she saw me, so I chose to avoid her. Then I spotted Thomas, the most handsome, sweetest guy I knew. I'd pretty much had a crush on him since preschool, but I'd always been too self-conscious to tell him about it. "Go and talk to him." Anita gave me a gentle nudge forward. "Go on, before Mary gets to him first." My nerves took over, so I said to her, "But what if he isn't interested?" She rolled her eyes at me. "Not gonna happen. Now go." He seemed happy to see me, and we both hung out and drank a lot. Then we snuck off upstairs to the master room. We sat on the bed, and he looked at me, like really looked at me, then said, "I really like you, Sarah, and I think you're the most beautiful girl in school." I blushed. This was the sweetest thing a boy had ever said to me. Then he leaned in and kissed me. OMG, talk about amazing! We were passionately kissing when the door burst open and someone shouted, "Why are you with her?" It was a furious-looking Mary. She continued yelling at us both and even tried to hit me, but Thomas protected me. Then he took my hand and led me out of the room. Mary continued to shout mean comments at me, but I didn't care. Thomas liked me, and she just needed to deal with it. A week later, Thomas asked me out, and I said yes. Being his girlfriend was the best thing ever, as he made me feel so special. Suddenly, having a big butt didn't seem to matter. In fact, Thomas said it only added to my beauty. Then one day at school, I was sitting in class when an announcement came over the speaker. "Sarah Montgomery, please report to the principal's office right away." The principal said that Mary's parents had reported the fight between me and Mary, and I was the one who started it first. So I was expelled. I was so mad that I didn't even bother clearing up my locker. Instead, I just stormed out of there. I ended up at a different school, and I tried my best to focus on my studies. I wanted to go to college and study drama, as I loved acting, and believed my unique body shape would be a big selling point in the industry. Thomas and I continued to date. He always supported me and made me feel like I was capable of doing anything. I didn't see much of Anita anymore, but we kept in touch. One day, I was studying in a cafe when a man came over to me, passed me his business card, and told me that with a butt like mine, I could make serious money modeling. So that's how I became a photo model. Turns out the man hadn't been lying about the money. Okay, so I wasn't an actress yet, but I earned loads. Finally, the part of my body I was so ashamed of made me super successful. I paid off all my college fees and gave my parents back all the money I'd loaned off them. A few months later, I was on a date with Thomas, and in the middle of dinner, he bent on one knee and pulled out a ring and said, "Sarah, will you marry me and make me the happiest man alive?" Overcome with joy, I shouted out, "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you!" Finally, the day of our wedding arrived, and I was so excited. After everything I'd been through, I was finally going to marry my charming prince. I had the most amazing fairy tale dress and the perfect castle venue. Better still, Anita was there as my maid of honor. As I was dancing, I saw Jack, who was my drop-dead gorgeous cousin, and he just came to join my wedding party. Anita had always been looking to meet him. I was so excited and decided that tonight was the perfect time for Anita to get access to him. I went looking for her, but she wasn't on the dance floor or by the bar, so I searched upstairs. I was about to open one of the doors when I heard a male voice coming from within. "I'll try and get some money off her. Just give me a few weeks, okay?" Then I heard a girl's voice say, "But honey, we need the money now, and I don't like Sarah. She's more butt than person." Then the guy said, "You know I don't love her. I only love you." I looked through the crack in the door and saw the two of them kissing. Then I registered who they both were. It was Thomas and Anita. My new husband was kissing my best friend on our wedding day. Angrily, I ran into the room and threw my shoe at Thomas's head. Unfortunately, he ducked in time. Seeing me, Anita was extremely terrified and immediately ran out of the room, leaving just me and Thomas there. I shouted at him, "You're a jerk! Anything to say, huh?" Thomas looked at me in panic and confessed to me all. So Thomas told me how he'd liked me back in school, but over time, his feelings for me changed, and he found himself falling for Anita. He was going to break up with me, but then I ended up being successful. Seeing as he'd been the one supporting me, he thought it was only fair that he got a share of my money. So him and Anita constructed this whole wedding plan to take half of my money. I was so shocked. I had to sit on the ground. My heart felt like it was shattering in my chest. Then I opened my mouth and screamed at the top of my voice. I ran out of that place crying, and the wedding was canceled. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard. Being betrayed by the man I loved and my best friend was painful. I shed a lot of tears over them, but I refused to shed any more. Turns out, Thomas wasn't the man for me, but I believe that my perfect man is out there somewhere. My backside may be exceptionally large, but I'm still a real person with real feelings. I only wish the world was more understanding, but for now, I'm using my butt to progress in my career, and I have a feeling I'm gonna be just fine. Always be you, and never let anyone take away your shine. If you try so hard to fit in and be normal, then you'll never find out how truly amazing you are and how you were born to stand out.
Have you ever questioned if your teacher hates you? I wish I didn't have to, but yep, my teacher hated my guts, and she went out of her way to make it very clear. I'm Lori, by the way. I'm 15 years old, and I guess you could say I kind of stand out because of my looks. People say I'm kind of pretty. Anyway, this year I started high school, although I only joined halfway through the year because I was off sick for 6 months with glandular fever. Yep, I had the dreaded mono. I was so tired of lying in bed feeling sorry for myself, so when the doctor said I could finally go back to school, I was over the moon. Little did I know what was in store for me. On my first day, I had to show all my teachers my hospital certificate to explain why I'd missed so much of the year. When I gave it to Miss Atkin, my math teacher, she smiled and said, "Welcome. Nice to see you feeling so much better." I smiled back at her and said, "Thank you." And I was about to walk away when suddenly she said, "Excuse me, you're Lori Hannison?" Her face looked all weird, and when I told her, yep, that was me, something inside her changed. She gave me a cold stare and told me to go to my seat immediately. I was confused a little bit about her attitude, but then I moved on from it. The most important thing was how I could catch up with my class. After missing 6 months of math, I was super behind and couldn't understand anything. My mom had to hire a tutor for me, and he was such a good teacher. Only after 3 months, I finally caught up with them. I had a notebook from our sessions with lots of notes inside, and whenever I couldn't remember something, I'd just look at it. Well, one day, I had it on my desk at school, and Miss Atkin caught me seeing my notes. She marched towards me, grabbed it, and slammed it down in front of me. She was so angry and got right up in my face and said, "Never, ever bring another teacher's notes to my class. Do you hear me?" As she said that, a little bit of spit flew out of her mouth and landed on my nose. I was horrified. Why was she so angry at me? It kinda scared me, and I thought maybe she was just angry because I wasn't as good at math as everyone else. After that, I didn't dare bring my notebook to class, but sometimes I still struggled, so I'd ask my friend who sat nearby to help me. Miss Atkin always caught me asking her and would put me in detention. One time I just sneezed too loud and she gave me detention. I mean, can you even believe? It annoyed me so much that I started to rebel. I'd often fall asleep in her class, and I seriously lost all motivation to do well. And that's not all. One day, I wore a new dress to class, and I swear I looked exactly like all the other girls at school. But Miss Atkin publicly embarrassed me by making me stand up in front of everyone, then said, "Girls and boys, Lori is a fine example of someone who pays more attention to what she wears than to studying. Don't be like Lori." I could feel myself blushing, and I wanted to cry. She was deliberately being mean to me, and I had no idea why. I was not that kind of girl. I normally loved studying, and I didn't care about clothes and shoes at all. I couldn't say anything, though, because if I spoke back to her, she'd give me a worse grade. What made it all even worse was that she was also the cheerleading coach, and she had her pack of cheerleaders following her around everywhere. One time I was standing in the hall talking with my friend Joe. We'd been best friends since we were like 3 years old, and we also live in the same street, so we'd grown up together. Joe always had my back. So we were standing there chatting when Miss Atkin and some of her fave students walked by. Suddenly I heard one of the girls say, "Oh look, surprise, surprise, it's Lori flirting with a boy again." Then one of the other girls said, "Seriously, she's such a fake. I mean, she's using her illness to get attention from boys. How pathetic." I couldn't believe it. Did they think I was deaf or something? They were the ones who were fake with their thick layers of makeup and all of their gossip and drama. I didn't really care that they were saying these things, but what really got to me was the way Miss Atkin laughed along with them. I actually saw her nod her head, so she agreed with them. I knew that wasn't okay, and Joe saw it too. He was so angry and grabbed my hand and said we had to report her to the principal. I stopped him though and said, "Just leave it. I am still the new girl here, and I don't want to cause any drama. And anyway, I have a plan." I smirked at him as I said this. So, Miss Atkin has this policy where if someone's phone rings in class, they have to answer it on speakerphone. And that policy includes her, too. So that day, I pretended to bump into her as she entered the class and watched as her phone dropped out of her hands. I quickly picked it up and apologized for being so clumsy, but at the same time, I unmuted it when she wasn't looking. Easy peasy. You see, I'd arranged for Joe to call her. This was going to be hilarious. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, her phone started ringing loudly. Her ringtone was Beyoncé's Single Ladies, and everyone burst out laughing. She freaked out and quickly grabbed her phone to cancel it. But Joe was persistent. He just kept calling, and everyone in class reminded her of the policy, so she had no choice but to answer it. Well, just wait for this. She answered, and suddenly Joe's voice filled the room. But he'd put on a funny accent to make himself sound older. "Honey, don't forget about our secret date at our favorite hotel tonight." Miss Atkin looked like she wanted to die. She said, "Who is this? I don't know you." Then Joe said, "Come on, baby, what's up? Is your husband there?" Miss Atkin was now visibly shaking and said, "You've got the wrong number." But Joe wouldn't stop. "Aw, you're so cute. I'll see you tonight, baby. Get ready for a fun night. Wink, wink." At that, Miss Atkin hung up and the whole class was just deathly silent. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Joe had really outdone himself. However, I hadn't exactly thought it all through, because a couple of days later, Joe and I were about to walk home when he got called into the principal's office. I went with him, but they wouldn't let me in. I could see Miss Atkin in the room along with the principal and Joe. She'd somehow found out that it was Joe who'd called her, and now the principal said that Joe would be expelled and that his parents would need to come in for a meeting the following day. Oh my God, this was all my fault. When he came out, I rushed over and started apologizing, but Joe said, "Don't worry, I did it, so I'll take the responsibility." I was beside myself with guilt. I just kept saying, Joe, no, this is my fault. I'm the one who should be expelled. But Joe wouldn't even listen to me. Well, that evening I told my parents the whole story. I was crying as I told them, and obviously they were angry, but they were also supportive. The next day, Joe's parents came for their meeting. The principal was there, and the school board, and of course, Miss Atkin. Luckily, my parents arrived just in time to interrupt the meeting, and we burst into the room. We told them the truth, how I'd been so ill and had to get a tutor, and that's why I carried that notebook. Then how Miss Atkin had treated me so badly and been so rude to me the whole time. I told them the phone call incident had been my fault and that Joe had just wanted to help me. Suddenly, Miss Atkin stood up and pointed at me and said, I knew it was you. You spoiled brat. You should be expelled. What happened next was crazy. My mom jumped up and said, How dare you speak to my daughter like that? You hate her because she's my daughter. Get over it, Angela. It's been years. Well, Miss Atkin ran towards my mom and said, You're a horrible woman, and so is your daughter. You deserve each other. She was about to grab my mom, but my dad jumped up and stopped her. I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was so shocked. The principal looked so puzzled. Then he told us all to go home and calm down. When we got home, my mom sat me down and said, If you're being mistreated, you need to tell us. Don't suffer it out alone, okay? I told my mom I was fine, and that school was great, but then my dad interrupted and said, You're fine? Don't lie to us. You were almost expelled. Then my mom said, Honey, calm down. It's not her fault. You saw her teacher. She's a demon. Then my dad just laughed, and I was so confused. Then he said, Oh yeah, Lori, we should have told you this already, but Miss Atkin was at school with us. Then they told me how the three of them had gone to high school together, and both my mom and Miss Atkin had a crush on my dad, so they became sworn enemies. They fought all the time, and Miss Atkin had been expelled from school because of my mom. Of course, my dad hadn't known all of that back then, and he'd fallen in love with my mom. Wow, now I understand the real reason Miss Atkin treated me like that. She was obviously still angry at my mom, and when she'd seen my name, she hadn't been able to control her anger anymore, and she'd just released it all on me. My mom said, Lori, you look exactly like me in high school. Because I was pretty, so many people were jealous. Then she turned to my dad, smiled, and said, I can see that Joe is quite similar to your dad. You should be careful. At that, Mom and I burst out laughing. My dad was just speechless. And guess what? It all worked out in the end. Miss Atkin got reassigned to another school, and Joe and I were only suspended from school for 2 weeks. Now we're closer than ever, and there's definitely some real chemistry between us. Finally, high school is getting good again, huh?
Yes! Headshot! Go cry to your mama! You're probably wondering who this gaming pro is. Well, that's me. Yes, it's 3 a.m., and I've been playing for 9 hours straight, but time sure does fly when I'm gaming. I'm Cooper, by the way, and I live with my wife Amelia and our baby girl Ara. I wanted to call her Zelda, but my wife said no way. I love gaming, and always thought it would be there to save me, but instead, it almost cost me everything I love. It started back when I was a little kid. My parents argued a lot, so I used to make a fort in my room, switch on my Nintendo DS, and escape into a virtual world. This love of games continued as I grew up. I didn't socialize or anything. Instead, I rushed home from school and went straight on my Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. I didn't have any real friends. Nope. The only kids I spoke to were ones I gamed with. Then I graduated from college and ended up with a job as a system engineer for a big tech company. Geez, it was exhausting. By the time I got home, I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open, let alone game. So, I put my gaming equipment in the basement. But then everything changed when I bumped into Amelia in a local coffee house. Whoa. She was the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I guess she must have seen something she liked in this goofball, as after dating 6 months, we got married. I know. Crazy, huh? Soon after, she fell pregnant. I was excited but also terrified. How did that happen? I mean, I know how it actually happened, but whoa. Me? A dad? Then, when Aura was born, my life turned completely upside down. You see, babies cause a lot of stress. Did you know that the quickest way to get a child's attention is to sit down and look comfortable? Because every time I did that, she started to cry. Work sucked, and then my home life sucked too. There was no escape. I felt like I was going to explode. So I went down to the basement and set my PC up. I started playing World of Warcraft. It felt incredible to be a druid again. The thought of gaming kept me going at work. Then when I got home, I barely acknowledged my wife and daughter and rushed down to the basement to play games. Amelia wasn't happy about it. She often appeared with a crying Aura and told me to take her. But I just grunted out "I'm busy," then carried on with my game. Hey, she was the one at home all day while I worked my butt off. All she needed to do was take care of the baby and keep the house clean. Easy. I told her this, and she got mad and made me sleep on the couch. Great. No, I mean really great. I could play video games all night long. Awesome. But it turns out it's much easier to game all night when you're in high school and can catch some Z's at the back of the class. But not so easy when you have a taxing job. I was on level 100 of exhaustion, so it wasn't surprising that I ended up messing up at work and got fired. Amelia was furious and demanded I apply for other jobs. Nah, I didn't want to. I mean, hello? No more early mornings, no more deadlines, no more cranky boss. It was just me and my beloved games. On one occasion, I was heading toward a record high score when suddenly Amelia appeared and blocked the screen. Babe, you need to move. I jabbed at the game console as I desperately tried to peer around her. No, she shouted at me. What's happened to you, Cooper? You look like Gandalf, only the homeless version. You hadn't taken a bath and shaved for weeks. You're killing me here. Now I'm dead. Thanks a lot. I slammed my fist onto the table. That's it. Get out. She yanked on my arm. I can't take this anymore. Get out. She actually kicked me out of my own home. That crazy woman. I didn't have any friends, so I ended up at my parents' house. This was so humiliating. I told them that it was just Amelia being hormonal, but they said she told them all about my gaming obsession, and it had to stop. They'd signed me up to be some guinea pig for an experimental treatment program in Hawaii. Hey, maybe a beach vacation didn't sound so bad, right? But nope. The island was literally in the middle of nowhere. Where was the hotel? All I saw were tiny huts with grass roofs. What? They couldn't expect me to stay here. This instructor guy called Cole gathered the group on the beach and gave us a rundown of the rules. We'd be camping here for the whole month, without any digital devices. We also had to follow a strict diet and exercise plan. Are you kidding me? I felt like I'd been sucked into a survival game and the escape button was busted. Everybody else started building their tents side by side. Socializing wasn't really my thing, so I built my tent away from them by the sea. It was hungry work and my stomach was rumbling. So I asked Cole when dinner was ready. He told me it was my job to make a fire. Then he passed me a note with instructions. 1. Gather dry wood. 2. Create a fire structure. 3. Light the fire by using the hand drill method. Okay, sounded easy. Dang it! I've been spinning this for about 20 minutes now. Where's the damn fire? I was about to give up when I suddenly saw something glowing. Oh my god, it worked! But then I felt a sneeze and couldn't hold it. Oh no, there goes the ember. In the end, this one guy pushed me out of the way and lit the fire in a few minutes. What a show-off. I was licking my lips in excitement when I saw Cole bringing out some food, but disappointedly, he passed me a plate of veg. What? I shouted out, "Where's the freaking chicken?" Cole pointed at the white thing on my plate. It's chicken breast. No, that's not chicken. Where are the wings and the breadcrumbs? He rolled his eyes. It's called clean eating. Get used to it. This place was a nightmare. But a good night's sleep would make me feel better, right? Wrong, as the ground was as hard as rocks. Finally, I fell asleep, only to wake up with soggy feet. Oh no, my tent was flooded. No wonder nobody else chose to camp next to the ocean. Island routine was awful. It was full of dumb group activities such as meditation, beach soccer, and hiking. One day we even had to build a raft. As usual, I tried my best to avoid working and socializing, but there's no way they'd leave me alone, so I reluctantly participated. After it was done, we tried it out, but it soon capsized, and I was the only one that couldn't swim. Everyone immediately rushed over and saved me. I was so touched and felt ashamed that I've been so self-centered. So after that, I actually tried to put myself out there and be more sociable. And not gonna lie, it was not too bad. Then our evenings were spent sitting around the campfire and listening to everyone drone on about their problems. My turn was easy for me because I had no problems. The problem was my wife, not me. She didn't understand that I had a lot of pressure at work and home, so playing video games was my only escape. Everyone tutted and glared at me. Then a guy named Brad said, "That's not cool, bro. To be honest, I was the same way. I was addicted to watching sports and refused to help my wife out. So we switched places, and I learned how hard caring for the kids and looking after the house is. I knew I needed to change before I lost my family forever, so that's why I joined the program." Poor guy, but this wasn't the same for me, was it? I don't know, maybe I had been a little unfair on Amelia. I was thinking about this as I walked back to my tent when this girl named Brittany caught up with me. She put her hand on my shoulder and flicked out her hair. Was she, flirting? I waved my wedding ring finger in front of her, but she just shrugged and said, "I don't see your wife here. Come to me when you change your mind." Then she walked away. Geez, this girl was crazy. Kinda hot, but still crazy. The next day, I unzipped my tent, ready for another day in this nightmare. But what was this? Huh? It was kinda beautiful here. It was like I was seeing it for the first time. The sparkling sand, swaying palm trees, lush tropical plants, and endless sunshine. Amelia and Aura would love it here too. I hoped they'd both forgive me. I really did miss them. By the end of the month, I didn't want to go home and play games anymore. Instead, I wanted to hug my family and never let them go. The day before we left, Cole rewarded us all with a 1-minute phone call. As much as I wanted to hear Amelia's voice, I was kinda nervous. I hoped she wasn't mad at me anymore. The phone started to ring, but some guy picked up. I asked where Amelia was, but he said she was in the shower. Then the line went dead. My 1 minute was up. Who was that dude? Was she having an affair? We were still married. And we have a child together. Furious, I ran into Brittany's tent, wanting to get back at my cheating wife. Brittany came toward me and was about to kiss me, but I couldn't go through with it. So I dodged out of the way, mumbled out sorry, then hurried out of there. The next day, I finally got off the island, and I went straight home to confront Amelia. I opened the door to see a man standing there holding my little Aura. How dare he? I yelled out, "Get away from my daughter!" Suddenly, Amelia appeared. "Cooper, stop! It's Rob!" I processed this information. Oh wait, he was Rob, her half-brother. Oops. I'd never met him before as he'd been living abroad. I quickly muttered out an apology to him. How embarrassing. I noticed Amelia was giving me this weird look. Then she said, "Wow, Cooper, you look so different." Oh yeah, before we were sent home, each of us were treated to a little makeover. A new haircut, new clothes, and a shave. And the clean eating and exercise meant I'd lost 20 pounds. Guess Amelia just couldn't resist this new hottie in town. She went straight for one big hug. So, in the end, Amelia forgave me for being a massive jerk. Now I have a new job. It's pretty boring, but I enjoy coming home and spending time with my family. As for gaming, I still do it, but in moderation. Only Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I make sure I switch it off by 10 p.m. Then I go and cuddle my wife. The gaming world is great and all, but I've come to learn that there's something even better in life, and that's making memories in the real world with my girls.
The buzzing of my phone woke me up. Ugh, what was this? It's 6 a.m. for Christ's sakes. Go away, I slurred at my phone, trying to reach my arm over to shut it up. The buzzing stopped briefly, but then started up again, so I answered it with a frustrated, "Yeah." My girlfriend Nayla replied, "Samuel, my roomies are going away for the night, so hurry over and bring me a big kiss." Well, that sure got my attention. I sat upright and replied, "Sure, babe, I'll shower then come right over." "Ooh, I love it when you freshen up for me," she giggled. Anything for my girl. I was so excited that I whooped and fist-punched the air, then rushed out of bed to go get ready. Oh, how naive and unsuspecting I was. Guys, never in a million years could I have imagined the humiliating situation I was about to step into. Ah, my sweet Nayla, my high school sweetheart and the love of my life. The problem was that we now went to different colleges, but it wasn't just 3 cities separating us, you see. She lives in a female-only hostel. Yeah, you heard me right. It's female-only, and there are some pretty strict rules in place. The main one being, guys are only allowed to visit on weekdays between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. What a bummer. If this wasn't bad enough, Nayla's 2 roommates, Phoebe and Luna, were man-hating vultures. Shudder. Phoebe hated men because they'd cheated her out of money not once, but twice. As for Luna, well, I don't really know what her problem with guys was. I think she just likes copying Phoebe. So you see, that's the reason why I never stepped foot in there, not even during visiting hours. But now they were away. I was free to visit my girl without fear of them circling me with their death stares. I showed up smelling of my fave aftershave, and with a box of candy. It was so good to spend some time with Nayla, but geez, these visiting hours passed by quickly. Soon 5 p.m. arrived and I had to leave. It was even stormy out and I wasn't looking forward to the trip back. "Don't go," Nayla pulled on my arm. "I have an idea. Seeing as how my roomies are away, you should stay the night until the next day's curfew." She chewed on her lip. Wow, she was so sexy. She knew I couldn't resist it when she did that lip thing. I hugged her and said, "Now you're talking." That night we cuddled up on her bed and watched a romantic movie, had some chicken sandwiches and waffle fries. And with the sound of the storm outside as our setting, we French kissed. A lot. Talk about paradise. But then her phone buzzed. She checked the message. Her eyes full of panic, then she said, "Samuel, this is bad. The storm means that Phoebe and Luna are ending their trip early. They're on their way back." I knew that if anyone caught me here, they'd probably throw Nayla out. I couldn't let that happen to my girl. But escaping the hostel wouldn't be easy. She opened the door to check. The problem was her door opened up into the shared living room, and there were some girls hanging out in there. Ugh, what was I meant to do now? We were 4 stories up, so I couldn't exactly climb out of the window. And it's not like I could dig my way out. Nayla started pacing the room. Then she opened her wardrobe up and tried making space for me in there. Heck no, confined spaces weren't my thing. But thankfully, just then, she shook her head and muttered to herself, "That's no good, the others use it too." She quickly changed her mind. Then grinning at me, she said, "I know, let's turn you into a girl." Immediately, she pulled out from the wardrobe this long wig we used last Halloween. Putting the thing on my head, she continued, "Almost, I know, you need makeup." Then she started slathering this powdery stuff on my face. Oh dear, the madness has begun. I was so stunned I just sat there and let her make me up like I was a doll. The wig was so itchy and it kept on sticking to my lip gloss and stuff, and I couldn't even see properly through the fake eyelashes she stuck on. After finishing, she stepped back to look at her finished masterpiece. Then she burst out laughing. I looked in the mirror. Even through my sticky eyelash vision, I could tell that I looked ridiculous. Seriously, I was more a clown than a girl. She threw an oversized dress at me and said, "I don't have anything else that'll fit you." I reluctantly got changed, and then I noticed that she was staring at my legs. I looked at them too. Geez, they were gorilla-level hairy. Don't worry, I'll sort those out for you." The next thing I knew, she was positioning me down on her desk chair and then passed me a towel. In case of emergency. Then she started preparing the wax strips. What could be so bad about a little bit of wax, huh? Then she ripped it off. Oh, good God, the pain. I began to perspire and bit down on the towel to block out my screams. Why did girls put themselves through this torturous activity? No thanks, I'd rather be hairy. The last wax strip was the worst, and my screams escaped out of the towel. Oops! I immediately jumped on the bed, facing the wall, and pulled a blanket over my head, while Nayla tried to put away all the makeup and stuff as fast as possible. The girls in the living room for sure had heard me and rushed inside. Behind them were Phoebe and Luna, who just got home. "What's with the screaming, and who is she?" Phoebe pointed at me. I thought I saw a spider, but it was just a clump of hair. And this is Samantha. She's my friend, but she's come down with a fever and she's gonna have to stay over." Suddenly, the blanket was pulled out and a hand came towards my forehead. My heart stopped beating for a second. Then Luna said, "Yup, she's on fire. Let's leave her to rest." Whew, that was a close one. Turns out the waxing session had heated me up so badly that I ended up drenched in sweat. So I could totally pass for being ill. Luckily, after that, the other girls left the room to give me some space. Nayla cuddled up to me and whispered, "You're doing great. We need to keep this up till morning. Then you can leave when the boys are allowed here." I gave a meek nod. I was too afraid to talk in case someone heard me. This was bad. But I guess all this drama wiped me out as I managed to fall asleep. I awoke to someone pounding my shoulder. "Hey, you're snoring like a grunting pig!" Nayla hissed at me. After that, I lay there wide-eyed and terrified. I didn't dare fall back to sleep. It was going to be a long night. The minutes went by so slowly, but then, oh no, Mother Nature called. I tried crossing my legs, but it didn't help. All I could think about was the beach and a waterfall, and I had to go to the bathroom right now. The room was dead quiet, so the other girls must be sleeping, right? I tiptoed through the room, then to the living room. Not familiar with the house, I had to use my hands to guide myself. Then suddenly, I accidentally touched something soft. While my brain was trying to work out what it was, I felt a slap across my face, then a girl said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Horrified, I tried to squeak out a "sorry" with the girliest voice I could, then hurried off to find the bathroom. But that was not all. While I was in there, the door suddenly opened, and a girl saw me peeing while standing up. Damn it, I should have locked the door. Then she yelled out, "What on earth is this?" I finished what I was doing, then turned around to try to explain, but the girl looked so terrified as she pointed at me and stuttered, "Ghost! Ghost!" Oh, right. My wig was hanging down over my face, so I probably looked like that spooky girl from The Ring. I froze there, not sure what I should do next, when the other girls gathered around me. Luckily, my babe ran over and put her arm around my waist and said, "Sorry, girls, my friend often sleepwalks, and combined with the fever, well, it's made her delirious." Then she quickly pulled me back to her room and everyone dispersed. Phew, that was a close call. After that, I lay in bed too afraid to cough, flinch, and basically breathe. It was the longest and most tiring night of my life. Finally, morning arrived. This ordeal would end soon, right? Wrong! Phoebe and Luna wouldn't leave the room at all. What was going on? Didn't they have lives to lead? In the end, Nayla asked them, "You two don't have classes today, huh?" They must have shaken their heads or something, and then she said, "Oh, okay. There's a new clothes shop open in the mall. Want to check it out?" Without responding, Phoebe sprang to her feet, walked over to me, pulled back the blanket, and tugged at my wig. Then, with a massive smirk on her face, said, "Game over, Samantha!" Shocked, me and Nayla tried muttering out explanations, but Phoebe rolled her eyes. "Quit it. I can recognize a man from a mile away. Besides, his boots are under your bed. Then there's his aftershave. It stinks." She waved her hand in front of her face. "Well, you fooled me." Luna stared at me. "Actually, your makeup's pretty good." "Huh, but not me," Phoebe sneered. "I only kept quiet because I don't want to get Nayla kicked out. That, and it was kind of funny watching you both try to keep up the pretense." She glared at me. "But I suggest you leave before I change my mind." I headed toward the door, but then Nayla said, Babe, you may want to change first." Oops. In all the drama, I'd forgotten I was still dressed up as a girl. She handed me some face wipes so I could remove the makeup. Then I changed back into my clothes, muttered out an apology to her roomies, then hurried out of there. So this happened a while ago, but just thinking about it still makes me cringe. Oh, the shame. I haven't seen Luna and Phoebe since, and I don't think I'll ever be able to look them in the eye again. One good thing to come out of it, that Nayla and me are now stronger than ever. The things we do for love, huh? So that's it, the most cringeworthy episode of my life. Yep, I know, it's so humiliating. So what about you? How bad is yours?
Not to brag, but these are really tasty. I bet even Grace, my picky sister, would finish this whole thing in one sitting. My cooking abilities were definitely up there with Michelin star chefs. I took another bite out of a fajita when I heard noises coming from the living room. Ah, Grace must be back. There she was, sprawled out on the couch, surrounded by her handbag, heels, jacket, and other stuff. "Grace, we've talked about this. I can't keep on tidying up after you. I have studying to do," I said as I picked up her things. Suddenly, Grace sat up, rested her head in her hands, then looked at me with sad eyes. An uneasy feeling welled up in my heart. Oh no, what was wrong? She sighed, and as she glumly stared at the floor, she said, "Easton, pack your things. We're moving out tomorrow." What? Again? I couldn't contain my shock. "Why, Grace? Do you owe someone money again?" Grace didn't answer, so I worriedly asked, "How much do you owe this time?" $7,000, she mumbled. What? $7,000? That's crazy. What did you borrow so much money for? I plopped down on the sofa in disbelief. I sat there, frantically wondering how to deal with Grace's enormous debt. Her extravagant spending habits had started after our parents passed away. I guess she was trying to numb out her grief with the latest must-have outfit. Then suddenly, she burst out laughing. "Come on, bro, I'm just kidding." Huh? I gaped at her. "Grace, it's not funny. For an instance there, I actually thought we'd have to elope or something." She grinned at me. If there's no debt, then why are we moving again?" I followed her as she walked out of the room, took a piece of fajita, and popped it in her mouth. Then she began to tell me everything. Turns out she'd found herself a sugar daddy fiancé, and we were moving in with him. I frowned at her. So what, now you're marrying some granddad? Why do you... Without letting me finish my sentence, Grace tapped my head with her knuckle. Do you seriously think a beautiful and famous model like me would marry some old man? Yet, even as a famous model, you still can't afford all of your branded goods, then you have to keep on moving house all the time to avoid the debt collectors. I winked at Grace. She was about to hit me on the head again, but I dodged it. Ha! The next morning there was a knock at the door, so I opened it to find a good-looking man in his mid-40s standing there. Ah, turns out he's Owen, my future brother-in-law. Before I had a chance to say anything, Grace tottered over in her heels and wrapped her arms around his neck. Honey, why are you so late? I'm so nervous. Smiling, Owen said, Darling, there's nothing to worry about. Everything's ready to welcome you and Easton. They continued coddling each other, so I quickly walked away. Seeing them like that gave me goosebumps. Ugh, cheesy. Owen drove us to his house. Well, I say house, but it was more like a royal palace. Inside there was a classic design to the place, with a luxurious style. I spotted a girl about my age sitting on the couch. Her arms were folded and she had a disgruntled look on her face. Owen looked at her and said, Vivian, why are you still sitting there? Come and welcome your stepmom and uncle. Vivian smirked and coldly replied, No thanks. I'm not in the market for a new stepmom, especially one who's barely out of high school. Then she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Oh no, she hates me. Does she? Seeing Grace look worried, Owen, though obviously a little angry, still tried to reassure her. It's okay, she's just being a typical teenager. Give her a few days and I'm sure she'll be fine. As for me, I was a little... No, I had to admit that I was very nervous. Vivian's sharp-eyed look had made me feel uncomfortable. I mean, I think a tank full of sharks would have been more welcoming than her. Looks like my new home life wouldn't be easy. The next morning, while I was helping Grace take some pictures of her posing in the living room, for the gram, she suddenly yelled so loud that I had almost dropped the phone. Hey, take that dog out right now! Hurry up! I turned around and saw Vivian walking what looked like a white cloud across the room. Seeing that, I ran toward her and said, Vivian, please take it outside, as Grace is allergic to dog fur. Vivian rolled her eyes and replied, This is my home, and this is my dog. Then she smirked as she let go of the dog lead. Oops! Her fluffy cloud dog immediately ran over to Grace and started barking at her. Grace yelped out, grabbed the pillow, then tried using it as a shield as she continued to scream at the dog to go away. At that moment, Owen appeared from upstairs, and with an angry look on his face, he snapped at her. Vivian, get Teddy out of here right now. No, it's them who should leave, she argued, while her dog barked so hard that Grace huddled up tighter in the corner of the couch and cried nonstop. Vivian, you've been warned. If you do it again, then I'll have no choice but to find Teddy a new home, Owen shouted loudly. Vivian huffed out, then gave Grace a fierce look as she picked up the dog and walked off. Man, it was true that life here wasn't easy at all, and it was about to get a lot harder. The next day, I was rearranging my new room when I heard a loud noise coming from downstairs. I went to check it out and found Grace instructing two maids on where to hang a giant print from one of her modeling photo shoots, and laying on the ground was the picture of Vivian with Owen and her mom. Move a little right? No, a little left. Okay, Grace ordered them. I hurried over to her and asked, what are you doing? She smiled. I'm just making a few decor adjustments. It looks far more luxurious now, don't you think? Then she picked a gray vase off the table and threw it into the trash can, then placed a double swan figurine in its place. Now that's much better, she rubbed her hands together. God, I know Grace was just trying to claim her position as host, but even so, she shouldn't have taken down the picture of Vivian's mom, if she knew. At that moment, a scream interrupted my train of thought. Vivian's. Sigh. I knew it. Grace, how dare you? Vivian blushed with anger. Then Grace interrupted her. This is my house too, and I have the right to put my mark on it. It makes the room look far more modern. No, you have no right. take down that disgusting picture and put the old one back. This is my house and your father will soon be my husband. So I can do what I please. So stop your childish strops and just accept it. Vivian resentfully picked up the family picture, then quietly took it up to her room. As a witness to it all, I have to be honest, I thought Grace was being outrageous. After all, Vivian's mother passed away not too long ago, so it was only natural to not accept the stepmother, right? But now Grace was messing things up and seemed to want to delete all of the images of Vivian's mother in this house. That wasn't cool. That evening I was reading The Theory of Everything in the garden when I felt a pat on my shoulder. I looked up to see Owen. Easton, I'm just letting you know that schools are all set up for you. You start next week. Then he added, you don't have a car yet, do you? I shall ask Vivian to give you a lift. You're in the same class anyway. Wait, what? I was actually going to the most prestigious and expensive school in the area? That's a dream come true, but I heard that all the other kids that went there were rich and influential. Could a poor guy like me adapt to the luxurious environment there? A feeling of uneasiness suddenly welled up in my heart, but then I told myself that everything would be fine. Monday morning arrived and I made sure I was ready early. I lingered around in the kitchen waiting for Vivian, but 30 minutes later, and she still hadn't appeared. I started to panic, as I didn't want to be late on my first day. That was the type of bad first impression that would stick. I was about to walk to the bus stop when I saw Vivian slowly coming down the stairs. She winced at me and said, "Oh, you're still here. I suppose you want to come with me then?" I didn't answer and just followed her to the car. As soon as I sat down, she sped away. I hadn't even fastened my seatbelt yet, which I then tried to do in a fumbled panic. Every time she pressed down on the accelerator, my heart skipped a beat. Then after some hellish 10 minutes, she stopped the car. Whew! I was still alive. But hang on, this wasn't school. I turned to Vivian and stammered to ask her, but she cut me off. "Get out of my car, and if you dare tell anyone how you know me, you will pay." Then she raised her fist to my face. Wow, she didn't have to be that aggressive. But fine, anyway. I didn't want to have anything to do with her either. As I briskly walked to school, I found myself worrying that this would be like it was in the movies, and I'd be teased for being the newbie. The school came into view, and damn, it was even more spectacular in real life. I took a deep breath to muster up the courage to enter the school. The grandeur and beauty of the place was so overwhelming. I was used to graffiti-covered desks and a jam locker door. Not here. Even the restroom door signs were expensive looking. I was wandering aimlessly trying to find my classroom when suddenly, I saw this girl walk ahead and drop something. I picked it up and called after her. "Sorry, is this yours?" The girl turned around, then squeaked out, "Oh my God, thank you. You're my knight in shining armor. I can't live without my glossy lipstick." Then she started doing this odd pose. Then she pouted and flicked out her hair. Was this a rich girl thing? It was very confusing, but hey, I guess she seemed nice. I smiled at her, then turned to walk away. That's when I noticed the groups of girls in the corridor. They were all staring at me, and one of them even winked. Then I overheard some of them talking about me. One of them said, "Ooh, he's cute." And another said, "It's about time we had a new hot boy in this school." Well, girls from rich schools were weird. I know I'm quite a good-looking guy, but I'd never had girls act like this toward me before. I chuckled inwardly and went to find my class. It seemed inevitable that my school life was destined to be rather, interesting. "So, who knows the answer to this?" the teacher asked. The whole class was silent as they looked down at their desks and scratched their heads. Suddenly a hand was raised. Yes, it was me. Just me. In fact, physics was my forte subject, so the question on the board didn't baffle me, so I gave an in-depth answer. The teacher looked surprised, then she smiled at me and said, "It looks like we have a budding Einstein in our midst." All this praise was a little embarrassing. Also, I noticed that all the girls in the class were looking at me with admiring eyes. Meanwhile, I overheard one boy whisper, "Where did this robot come from?" I unconsciously glanced over at Vivian. She was sitting in the corner of the classroom and even she was gawping over at me. Meeting my gaze, she immediately pouted and looked away. For the rest of the day, I continued to impress my teachers and classmates. In English Lit, I recited a verse from Twelfth Night, and in math, I wrote down the formula for pi on the board. Hey, being smart has its highlights, and it was good to get recognition for my brains. I'd already been recruited into both the physics club and the quiz team. Hey, turned out this new school was not that bad. I'm Easton, and if you haven't seen part 1 of my story, I advise you to go and check it out. So, I'm only at this elite school because my sister Grace is marrying an older rich man named Owen. Then, there's Vivian, Owen's daughter. I haven't quite worked her out yet, but she seems like trouble. As the first days went, mine was a success, so I was grinning as I walked toward the bus stop. Suddenly, a girl caught up with me and patted me on the shoulder. Hey, I'm Lila. We're in the same class. Hi, Lila. I'm Easton. I smiled at her. You're so good at, well, everything, she giggled. So, I like physics too. I think we should study together sometime. She chewed on her lip as she twizzled a strand of her hair around her finger. Yes, sure. Suddenly, a nudge distracted me. Vivian. She swaggered past us, then looked back at me and pouted. Seeing this, Lila rolled her eyes and tutted out, That girl is such a nuisance. I'd recommend you steer clear of the likes of her. I nodded at Lila's words, but kept my eyes on Vivian. At that moment, bump. Vivian, with her head so high, striking her arrogant walk, had crashed straight into some nerd who was walking while looking at his phone. I winced as I watched her fall on top of him, and his phone flung away and smashed as it hit the ground. She blushed and scrambled to get up, frantically took out the money from her wallet and stuffed it into the boy's hand and hurried away. Huh? What an obnoxious girl, Lila snarked. Thinking daddy's money solves everything? How ignorant. Sigh. I can only give her a shrug hearing those words, then quickly made my excuses about having to catch my bus. That night, I was watching Mythbusters on TV in the living room when I suddenly saw Grace running out of the bathroom screaming. Her skin had these red patches all over it, and she was crying out how there were dog hairs on her towel. At that moment, Vivian passed us. She looked Grace up and down, then smirked and said, Oh my, our model looks like a lobster today. Grace was so angry that she somehow managed to turn even redder. Vivian, you dare? Just you wait. After that, Grace burst into the office and dragged Owen into the living room. Oh man, it was really serious this time. Owen, look at me. I'm hideous and it's down to that spiteful child. She pointed at a still smirking Vivian. These tricks of hers are unacceptable. She shook her arm vigorously, then stomped her feet on the floor. Owen frowned at Vivian, but she didn't show any guilt. Instead, she just shrugged and said, I have no idea what she's talking about. The atmosphere in the house was so tense that I literally couldn't breathe. Seeing this, Grace continued, Honey, it's time we sent her to boarding school. The teachers there will be better equipped to manage her and help her change. Owen listened attentively, then nodded. Vivian's smirk dropped, and she glared at Grace, then turned to Owen and said harshly, Dad, why do you always listen to her? She's just an outsider. I'm your daughter. Okay, let's take it slow. I'll see what's the best for you. Then he turned to Grace and said softly, Come on, darling, let's go get you some medicine. Then he led Grace to their bedroom. I thought that the threat of boarding school would change Vivian, but no. It only seemed to entice her more. One day during dinner, Owen's phone rang. He went out of the room to answer it, and when he returned, his face was all scrunched up in anger. Then he slammed his fist on the table. Vivian, you're causing trouble again? How dare you break in and steal stuff from the chemistry lab? I really have no words. She didn't respond, still focused on her plate, which drove Owen even madder. He shouted, Your teacher said if you make any more minor mistakes, they'll expel you. Is that what you want? Oh my God, expelled from school? That would bring shame to our family, Grace added. Vivian glared at Grace, but she still continued. I did tell you to send her to boarding school, but you refused. Then suddenly, her eyes lit up as if she had just come up with some crazy idea. Then she turned to look at me with a smile that sent chills down my spine. Ah, I know. Easton's a top student, and he's in most of Vivian's classes, isn't he? So he can supervise her. Maybe there will be good results. What? No way! Vivian and I shouted in unison. While I was silently cursing Grace's crazy idea, Owen seemed quite amused by it. Yeah, that sounds good. No way! Who the hell is he to monitor me? Well, if you don't like it, then I suggest you go up to your room and start packing for boarding school. Vivian didn't say anything else, just sulked and stormed back to her room. Owen shook his head wearily, then told me to go have a little talk with him in his office. Easton, please help me keep an eye on Vivian. Honestly, I don't want to send her away to a boarding school, but I can't sit around and wait for her to be expelled either. This put me in a dilemma here. I didn't want any involvement with this stubborn girl, but I couldn't say no to Owen. Seeing me hesitate, he continued, Please, she's a good kid. She's just had a tough time and she's so angry at everything. She's so angry at me. And yeah, you guess it, I gave in and agreed to help him. Then he immediately listed off a series of tasks. Don't let Vivian get anything lower than a C. Don't let her hang out with any bad friends, including Carter, her current unpleasant boyfriend. Follow her closely and don't let her break any school rules. Make sure she takes studying seriously for once. These sounded simple, right? For normal people, maybe, but Vivian was far from normal. Instead, she was troublesome, cunning, and uncooperative. I had no idea how I was going to convince a rebel like Vivian to abide by any of these rules. But I'd told Owen I'd help. So now I had to stick to my word. So from then on, I officially became Vivian's tutor and butler. I had to tutor her every day, keep an eye on her 24/7, and of course, put up with her mischievous pranks to escape my management. Please, focus! Why do you keep on staring out the window and daydreaming when the exams are right around the corner? I got really mad at Vivian. I don't want to, but I have a headache, so I just can't concentrate. She wasn't fooling me with that fake pity face. I immediately pulled a tablet of aspirin out of my shirt pocket and tossed my head to signal her to take it so that she could keep studying. Vivian was dumbfounded, picked up her pen, and started doing the homework. But within just less than 5 minutes, she turned to me and asked, Hey, Easton, do you like playing games? I flipped the pages of the book and reluctantly said yes. Clearly, she was just waiting for that, as she immediately took out her Nintendo Switch, excitedly gave it to me and said, So you can play this, and I'll sleep for a bit. I stayed up so late last night watching movies. When the time's up, just tell my dad that we finished studying. Before I can say anything, she'd already jumped onto her bed and wrapped herself in blanket. Ugh, so frustrating. But then an idea popped in my head. Well, then let's change the learning method. Language shower. How does that sound? Then I reached for the mini speaker on the table, played a Spanish audio lesson at the highest volume, and placed it right by her ears. She quickly covered her head with a pillow, but I didn't give up and continued pushing the speaker close. After rolling around in bed for a while, she finally admitted defeat, and with a frowning face, went back over to the desk and said, Okay, just stop this crazy torture right away, please. You want me to sit here and study, right? I folded my arms and smiled smugly. Ha! This girl is not that hard to handle. I didn't share Vivian's carefree attitude. Instead, I was so anxious that she would fail her exams and I'd get the blame. I even had to beg her, Hey, please, focus on studying literature, please. If you get an F, then I will be dead meat. Huh? That's none of my business, Vivian sneered. I desperately passed her my essay. Here, I've already prepared this for your reference. You just have to memorize it. She quickly scanned it once, then dropped it down on the table and replied, Nah, you can learn it by yourself. I have better things to do. Helplessly, I picked up the essay and read it out loud. I read it again and again, with the hope that while she was polishing her nails, she could remember a few sentences. At first, Vivian seemed annoyed, but then she giggled and said, Okay, let me learn on my own. Your poor face looks so funny. What a miracle! She actually started reading through the notes, but to be honest, I didn't expect much. But you know what? the most unexpected thing happened. When we were standing outside of the school gates, she showed me her exam results. B's and C's, and not one D. Man, this felt even better than when I got an A+. Well, almost. I was about to congratulate her when I heard someone shout her name. Then I turned around to see some kids walking over to her. Oh no. Were these the bad influences Owen told me to keep her away from? Oh no. Vivian's friends were walking over to her, so I quickly pulled her aside and sternly told her to go home immediately. Vivian moved her hand away and said, "Huh? It's none of your business. I could be anywhere with anyone and you have no right to force me." Fine then. If you don't come with me, then I'll call Owen and you'll no doubt be sent off to boarding school by the end of the week. Is that what you want? She reluctantly said her goodbyes to her friends, then followed me home. I couldn't help but smile proudly. I'd done a good job. Victory felt good. I'm Easton, and if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2 of my story, I suggest you go and check them out. As for Vivian, no, I don't have some sort of superiority complex. I'm only bossing her about like this because her dad, Owen, gave me the job of supervising her. I have had her best interests at heart. As if she messes up, then he's going to send her to boarding school. I don't get it. I know Vivian doesn't want to be sent away, but why couldn't she just behave? She was so not a simple girl. In fact, Mischief should be her middle name. The next day when I walked into class, everyone was looking at me and laughing. Then the boy sitting next to me showed me a photo on his phone. Geez, what on earth was it? Yup, it was me asleep on my desk in my room. My mouth was wide open and I was drooling. Who the heck posted this online? Could only be Vivian. Suddenly, a paper plane hit my head. I unfolded it and read the message. That was for embarrassing me in front of my friends, even Stevens. Well played, Vivian. Of course, I was far too much of a diligent and responsible person to bail on my mission because of some silly photo. You know what? Since I agreed to supervise Vivian, I always made sure she was in my sights. I followed her so closely that soon the rumors started circulating such as, "Are those two dating?" and "Easton is such a gold digger." But I just found their childish words amusing. Besides, I knew the truth. Until one day I was studying in the library when Lila sat down next to me. "What's going on between you and Vivian? I mean, you always seem to be together." I was too tongue-tied to reply, so Lila continued. "I think you should stay away from her. Trust me, there's nothing good about that type of girl." Out of nowhere, Vivian jumped in and shouted, "Oh, excuse me. What did you just say? So what type of girl do you think I am?" Everyone in the library stared at us. Lila could hardly answer, while Vivian's glare unnerved me. I was trying to find a way to cool things down, but Vivian just angrily swiped the book off the table, then stormed off. I wanted to chase after her, but Lila grabbed my arm and told me to ignore her. Then, in a sweet voice, she asked me to help her with her math problem. I forced a smile and replied, "Yeah, sure." After that, every time I saw Vivian, whether it was at school or home, she didn't say a word to me and instead just gave me death stares. Her look was a little on the scary side and made me feel uncomfortable, but above all else, it made me feel guilty. But I didn't understand why. I hadn't done anything wrong, right? Then one time, I was on my way to the canteen when I saw Grace. What was she doing here? I caught up with her and she said the principal had called as Vivian was in trouble again. But as Owen was on a last-minute business trip, she had to come. She's such a pain in the neck. I had to leave my nail appointment early. She waved her halfway painted nails in front of me. Look, how hideous. I walked alongside Grace. Lunch would have to wait, as I needed to find out what Vivian had done now. I didn't understand it, as I had been keeping a close eye on her and I hadn't seen her do anything bad. From the outside, I saw both Lila and Vivian were in there. Grace stormed straight into the office and I stepped in behind her. It turns out the history exam had disappeared. And earlier on, Lila had seen Vivian sneaking into the teacher's classroom. Frustrated, Vivian shouted out, "No, that wasn't me. Lila made that up." But the principal didn't believe her and was persistent that Vivian had done it. He also said Lila was an exemplary student, and there was no reason for her to make this up.
"This is it. You're expelled,"
the principal declared. I looked at Vivian with concern, and she looked like she was about to cry. Right at that moment, Grace spoke up. "Do you have any other evidence besides this girl's words? How can you accuse Vivian like that when your only proof is another student's words? I don't think my daughter is that kind of person." Vivian looked up at Grace with her eyes widened. After discussing for a while, in the end, the principal changed his mind about expelling Vivian and decided this needed investigating further. Phew. I felt relieved. As we walked out of there, Vivian awkwardly looked at Grace and said, "Thank you," then ran away. It was strange seeing her acting all timid, but I guess what Grace did meant a lot to her, as after that, they stopped the petty feuding. Grace didn't tell Owen about what happened, and Vivian even asked her friend to take care of her pet dog for a while so Grace could have a break from sneezing. It was nice not living in a war zone, but more than that, this version of Vivian was, well, very cute. It was a Saturday night, and I was playing on the PS5 in the living room when Vivian appeared. Whoa, she was all dressed up and she looked, really good. "Later, losers. I'm going on a date with Carter," she waved at me. I immediately jumped up and blurted out, "No, you can't!" I mean, that's one of the taboos Owen had mentioned before. I tried everything to make her stay at home, but to no avail. So I grabbed my jacket and secretly followed them to their rendezvous. Yes, I was third-wheeling, but I needed to check nothing bad would happen to her. I mean, I'd promised Owen. I followed them to an open-air cinema. Ugh, cheesy. Sitting not far away, I saw them kissing, and then halfway through the movie, he took her hand and led her off. Where were they going? Looking at Carter's eager face, it wasn't hard to guess what he had planned. As Vivian's supervisor, I couldn't let that happen. So I immediately ran over to them, quickly wrapped my jacket around Vivian's waist, and whispered to her, "Your Aunt Flo is on her way over." Vivian looked startled, and to Carter's surprise, she hurriedly told me to take her home. When we arrived back, she rushed up to her bathroom. And just as I expected, exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds later, she ran up to me and shouted, "How dare you fool me! You ruined my 3-month anniversary date!" Then she angrily went back to her room and slammed the door. She could be mad with me if she wanted. I was just doing my duty. After that, Vivian refused to talk to me. And whenever I saw Carter, well, his death glares made his feelings toward me pretty darn clear. Then one day after school, while I was waiting for Vivian to appear at the school gate, my phone buzzed. It was from her. "I'm trapped in the girls' restroom on the 2nd floor. Please hurry." Without thinking much, I rushed over there. I was just about to bang on the cubicle door when I felt someone grab my collar and pull me back. It was the principal, followed by Carter and Vivian. What? Why was she there? This was so confusing. The principal made me follow them to their office, then accused me of being a peeping perv. What? I tried defending myself, but he didn't believe me. I suppose this wasn't surprising, seeing as I didn't tell them about Vivian's message. However mad I was with her for framing me, I knew if I landed her in trouble, she'd be expelled. And I didn't want that. Not only did it majorly suck that everyone thought I was a peeping Tom, but I also ended up being suspended for the rest of the week. I stayed in my room feeling glum and forced myself to study. But I couldn't concentrate on anything, not even physics. This was awful. While I was thinking about it, I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to see Vivian standing there. Great, now she was here to rub salt in the wound. Regardless of how much you hate me, you shouldn't have framed me like that. This could affect my future. I went to close the door, but she stopped it with her foot. Wait, I have some good news for you, she smiled at me. You can go back to school tomorrow. It was all Carter, so you're off the hook. I looked at Vivian with amazement and asked if it was true. As soon as she nodded, I immediately hugged her. A few seconds later, I felt like I was overreacting, so I let go of her and scratched my head shyly. Then Vivian told me everything. Turns out she found out that Carter had stolen her phone and sent me that message to trap me. Then he told the principal he'd seen me sneaking into the girls' restrooms. Vivian made him confess. but she secretly recorded it and sent it to the principal. So I wasn't suspended anymore. What a relief. Man, I'm really grateful to Vivian. But then I asked her, "But Carter is your boyfriend." "Nah, I've decided I've outgrown bad boys. Instead, I want someone caring and sweet." She grinned at me. Well, this was a few months ago, and although Vivian is still feisty and stubborn at times, she is taking her studies more seriously now. The atmosphere in our house is pretty good, which makes my life so much easier. And you know what? Vivian and Grace are even going shopping together, and I have to go and carry their stuff. Oh, and if you're wondering about Vivian and me, I guess a rebel and a top student can get on after all. I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
I was out for my afternoon jog and decided to take a new route. Suddenly, I saw a huge European-style mansion and had to stop to gaze at it. The walls were covered in moss, and honestly, it looked pretty eerie. I looked up, and a flock of crows were standing on the roof cawing. It sent shivers up my spine, and immediately made me think of movies like The Conjuring or something. Wouldn't be surprised if that house was haunted. Suddenly, I got startled by the voice of an old lady. "The mansion looks magnificent, doesn't it?" I turned to look at her, and she continued, "But you'd better stay away from it." "Why?" I asked her. Then she looked at me more closely and said, "Oh, you aren't a local here, are you?" I told her I was from Minnesota, but that my parents had said I could spend the summer here with my aunt. "Well, dear, let me tell you. The owner of this mansion was a young girl, super rich, but kept herself to herself. Rumor has it, she worshipped Satan. Can you believe it?" I asked her, "So where is she now?" "Oh, she mysteriously disappeared years ago, and the house has been abandoned ever since," the lady replied. Okay, this was seriously freaky. My hair was literally standing on end. But for some reason, I was more intrigued than ever. Oh, sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Ellie, a typical high school student, but also an avid detective story blogger. I spend a lot of my time on detective story forums and have always been attracted to weird and mysterious things ever since I was a little kid. Anyway, back to my story. So, one night, my aunt asked me to pop over to the grocery store to get some milk. On my way back, I passed the mansion and instantly got shivers. I looked up and saw a light flickering in a window on the second floor, like a candle or something. But no way. The old lady said the place was abandoned, right? The light kept flickering, and I couldn't stop watching. Suddenly, a shadow of a girl appeared. She was playing the violin, and the gloomy music was wafting through the cracks in the walls. Then, out of nowhere, a crow flew by screaming, "Caw!" I almost leapt out of my skin and ran straight home. How could anyone live in that freaky mansion? Wait a minute. What if I'd just seen the ghost of the owner who disappeared? Oh man, I had to figure this mystery out. I could even turn it into a detective story with a bit of horror thrown in for fun. As I lay there, I came up with the title, Real Life Death Mansion. And then I realized I could even make a YouTube video about it with real photos of the house and maybe even some footage taken inside as I uncover the mystery. Oh, this would be so good! I could barely sleep from excitement, and the next day, I asked my cousin Susan to come along and explore the mansion with me. "Hey Susan, want to come check out that creepy mansion with me?" "OMG, Ellie, are you crazy? You know that place is haunted, right? Like, full of ghosts and everything." "Yeah, that's why I asked you to go with me." I shrugged. "I would rather make a detour than walk past that house to get home. So what makes you think I would dare to go inside?" I tried to convince her it would be fun, but she kept refusing. Oh well, If no one dared to go into that mansion, then I shall be the first. Gathering up my courage, I went there alone. I managed to climb over the rusty iron fence that had almost fallen to pieces in the backyard. Then I noticed a door that was slightly ajar. As I got closer, I realized a satanic symbol was engraved on the door. Creepy! I closed my eyes, held my breath, and gently pushed the door open. The smell that hit me made me feel dizzy. A musty, abandoned kind of smell. I walked into the lounge, and it felt like I just walked into some old castle in France or something. There were cobwebs everywhere, and some massive ones hanging from the chandeliers. I looked around and noticed a portrait of a girl on the wall. She was beautiful, but her eyes looked so sad. Oh my, was this the owner? The one I'd seen playing the violin? I couldn't bear to look at the portrait any longer. It felt like her eyes were piercing my soul. I headed for the stairs and crept up as quietly as possible. I won't lie, I was terrified. It was so dark up there, and with every step I took, the floorboards creaked. I kept looking behind me, as it sounded like someone was following me. By this point, I'd broken out into a cold sweat. When I made it to the second floor, there was a long corridor ahead, but it was really weird. There was only one door. I walked towards it and pushed it open. It was a luxury room, definitely fit for a princess. And yup, there was the violin. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a picture. It was the same girl, but this time, her eyes were glowing red like fire, just like Sauron, the villain in The Lord of the Rings. I was so scared that I quickly turned the photo face down. This was when I heard the violin sound from somewhere. Okay, what was going on? The violin was right before my eyes, and I was supposed to be the only one in the house? I tried to calm down, took a deep breath, and walked in the direction of the sound next door. It was so weird, because the next door was an exact replica of the first room. Had I actually changed rooms? I walked towards the dressing table and noticed the photo in here was also turned face down. I picked it up, and it was the exact same photo, but this time, the face of the girl was bleached white. I dropped the photo in horror and ran off without looking back. I ran down the stairs 3 at a time, but when I reached the door, it was locked. I started banging on it, and by then I was hysterically crying. Help! Help me! I screamed. Suddenly, someone's hand touched my shoulder. My heart had definitely jumped out of my chest. Ah! I yelled at the top of my lungs, but when I turned around, there was this young guy standing there. A pretty cute one. Who are you? I stuttered. He frowned at me and said, "Who are you? And why are you here?" I could barely speak as I was shaking so much. Then the guy said, "Come on, let's get out of here. You look horrified." Then he took out a key and opened the door. Are you a ghost or something?" I stuttered. He started laughing and said, "Pretty creepy place, right?" I asked him if he saw the photos too, and he said, "Yes, terrifying. Like something out of a horror movie," I added. "Exactly. Perfect setting for a horror movie." I stared in confusion, and he laughed and said, "Yup, we're making a movie. I mean, I'm gonna rent this place to make a horror movie." Then he introduced himself as Jack, a young director who was interested in detective and horror movies. He was just checking the place out to see if it was suitable. I couldn't believe it. Wow, this is literally a dream come true. I've been writing detective stories since I could hold a pen, and I've always hoped I'd become a screenwriter on horror and detective movies one day. I'm so honored to meet you. I'm Ellie, by the way. Then Jack replied, "The pleasure's all mine. It's a pretty exciting industry to be in. I'd love to read some of your stuff sometime." I couldn't stop grinning. Then suddenly, another person showed up. Jack introduced him as Michael, a member of his film crew. But compared to how friendly Jack was, Mike was serious and intimidating. Jack could tell that I was nervous, so he laughed and said, "Michael's been under a lot of stress, so he looks a bit grumpy, right?" I just smiled shyly and asked Jack if I could have his number. As I walked home, I couldn't believe how happy I felt. Who knew such a scary adventure would turn into an epic opportunity? I texted Jack right away, saying I would love to learn more about his film, and I had to admit, I might have had a slight crush on him. He was so cute. I kept checking my phone, but he hadn't replied. That was so disappointing. But then, a few days later, he asked me out for coffee. I was so excited, and seriously, we had the best time. He even offered to drive me home. When I got into the car, he told me to close my eyes. Eek! Maybe he was going to kiss me. I was so nervous, but suddenly, something hit my face, and I didn't know anything else. When I woke up, I found myself in some kind of warehouse, with my hands and feet tied, and my mouth taped shut. Oh my God. Had I been kidnapped? Where was Jack? Suddenly, I heard a noise outside. I looked through the window and saw Jack and Michael talking to each other. What? Did the two of them plan this? But why? A moment later, Michael left, and Jack came towards me and removed the tape from my mouth. I started screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then Jack said, "Listen, I'm not going to hurt you, I swear, but there's something I need to tell you." Then he confessed that he was a member of a criminal organization named Iron Gloves. His gang were operating from the mansion, and so everything from the story of the mysterious missing girl, the ghost playing the violin, the eerie photos, were all made up by them. They did it so that no one would dare approach their headquarters. According to the gang's rules, any outsider that entered the mansion would be killed to protect the secrecy of the group. Michael had seen me enter and reported it to the boss, so Jack had been forced to carry out the mission, but he didn't want to do it, so that's why he pretended to kidnap me. Dear good God, this was too much! He asked me to leave right away, but I was worried about him. He said, "Don't worry, I've been wanting to leave for a long time, and so I have a plan." Fast forward 2 years, and now I'm a freshman majoring in screenwriting. It's so exciting chasing my passion, but I still think that summer at my aunt's was one of my best yet. Terrifying, but thrilling. Oh, and as for Jack, after we chatted in the warehouse, he let me go, and I quickly packed up all my stuff at my aunt's and flew home. A few weeks later, I saw an article that said he'd turned himself in, and that the police had caught the Iron Gloves gang. Now, Jack's in prison, but will soon be free. I have a feeling that deep down, he's a good guy, and I hope that I'll have the chance to meet him again and get to know the real him better. Who knows? His real-life experience might help me write one hell of an awesome story, too.